Hello everyone, this is Javier Correa, the Tax Terminator, live from Panama City, Panama, and today we are once again here in Casco Viejo, the charming colonial town here in Panama City. So after the British pirate Henry Morgan burned down the original settlement that was built by the Spaniards, they came here and they built a new version of Panama City, a new city that they now call home, and this is what is Casco Viejo today. So we are walking by, the Hotel La Compañía, which is a great hotel if you want to come here to Panama and have great brunch. Came here, absolutely delicious, absolutely wonderful. So as I'm walking around these charming little streets of Casco Viejo here in Panama, one thing definitely came to mind, and it is investing in Panama. Many people talk about real estate, many people talk about banks, and obviously on this channel we've covered those amply. But one of the most common things that we see in our clients, especially our younger clients, is, well, Javier, but I want to diversify my global investment portfolio. I want to be exposed not only to the S&P 500 index fund, but I want to have companies and I want to have stocks and assets all over the world. And I want those assets to be highly mobile. I want them to be highly liquid. And I just want to be able to optimize for tax as much as possible. And you know what? One of the things that I did think of was how interesting it is that here in Panama is one of the few countries that I know of where you can actually invest into a portfolio of Panamanian stocks and get residence. So think about it. You want to be a global investor, you want to diversify, potentially come here to Latin America and build a portfolio of investments here in the region to build a truly global investment portfolio. Panama is one of those few countries that will allow you to invest in stocks and get a residence permit. So here in Panama, there are some pretty interesting companies that you could look into for investment. Now, this is not investment advice, major disclaimer. I'm not an investment advisor. I'm just a guy telling you that there are some interesting opportunities according to his personal opinion. So here you've got, airlines, you've got banks, you've got insurance companies, you've got real estate development firms, you've got, many sectors of the economy. You've got hotels, you've got a lot of companies that are interesting, and some of them are actually publicly traded on the Latin American Stock Exchange, which is the Latin X exchange that you can find here in Panama. Now, is it as liquid maybe as the S&P 500 and as investing in US stocks? We're not there yet, but by Latin American standards, it is quite liquid, and you can find some very interesting high yield stocks in terms of capital gains if you're looking for your shares to go up in value over time, or maybe you want a solid dividend paying portfolio. Dividend-paying stocks from Panama are interesting. The withholding tax rate on stocks here in Panama is relatively low compared to what you find in most Western countries. So would I consider investing in Panamanian stocks? Yes, for sure. You've got a dollarized economy. You've got the travel hub and the business hub of the Americas right here. You've got good economic relations, historically speaking, with the United States and with other major powers. You've got the Panama Canal that drives trade through Panama. And so I just think globally speaking, it's a great place to do business. It's developing, it's attracting talent. Panama and the UAE have this thing in common where you really feel that they want successful people to come. They want entrepreneurs. They want people who are high level achievers, academically speaking. They want people who are large investors. And also I think that it's interesting because the outlook of Panama as a society is interesting. They favor demographic growth by having pro-family policies. They give your kids citizenship if they're born here. So ultimately, I just think Panama is such an interesting place to consider from an investment perspective. It is a place where the consumer market is growing, and it is a place where if a company is based here, then they can definitely project their economic might onto the world, and they can sell initially very easily into the Latin American and US markets and then onto the world. So overall, extremely interesting market to take into consideration. So essentially, if you have $500,000 to invest, $500,000, 500,000 US dollars, 500K, you can come to Panama. You can invest in stocks, and that can be in an individual stock if you want to take up a large position in a specific Panamanian company. It can be in a specific sector. It can be in some kind of index fund or some kind of ETF that they have here in Panama. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to do it. But you invest that money here, and guess what? You don't get temporary residence. You don't get a digital nomad visa. You don't get like a stay permit. You get permanent residence right away, which means that by owning stocks in companies that you feel comfortable with, by owning stocks in companies that pay you dividends, by owning stocks in companies that potentially will go up in value and generate significant capital gains, you can get permanent residence here in Panama. Now, the good thing is, unlike a US green card, which would be the equivalent, for example, in the US, having permanent residence in Panama gives you the option, but not the obligation to live here in Panama. So with your permanent residence permit, you can come and you can become a tax resident here in Panama and then potentially just enjoy the lifestyle, the weather, the lower cost of living, the territorial tax system, which allows you to optimize your taxes potentially down to zero, depending on your type of business and your type of investments. Or you can simply come here from time to time and use Panama as part of your trifecta method and just come here, once or twice a year, enjoy the weather. This could be your hub in the Americas, and then you move on to, Europe, Malaysia, back to the US or wherever it may be. And so that is also a good thing about the flexibility that Panama actually does provide. The interesting thing here is that you are essentially getting paid to get residence. So you kill two birds with one stone. At Nomad Capitalist, we usually talk about diversification from the immigration perspective. So having backup residence permits, having second, third, and even fourth passports nowadays. And we also talk about investment diversification, owning S&P 500 index funds and big American companies. That is great. I believe that's one of the best things you could do. But you also have to recognize that there are some very interesting economic developments going on in other countries and other jurisdictions that you may not have thought of just a decade, 15 or 20 years ago. And so if you want exposure to financial stocks, for example, why not combine stocks in US, Singaporean, and Swiss banks with a bit of Panamanian banking stocks as well? So globally speaking, Panama allows you to essentially make a profit through capital gains, dividends. It allows you to diversify your global economic portfolio while still getting a residence permit here in Panama. Now, one of the main benefits when you get a residence permit here in Panama and when you go straight to permanent residence is essentially that you are on the path to citizenship right away. Once you get your residence permit, which in this case is automatic, so you are a permanent resident of the country immediately after you make your investment into stocks, you are on a path to citizenship. 5 years, and you can request naturalization here in Panama. Now, the naturalization process can take a bit long because on the administrative side, things are relatively smooth, but you do rely on the president actually signing your naturalization letter. So, we've heard some different reports of people who have had to wait very little time and some people who have had to wait a long time to get their Panamanian passports actually issued and their citizenship fully granted. But ultimately, you're on the path. You're doing things the right way. And as a permanent resident of the country, you can stay here for as long as you like, essentially. So this is obviously a very good thing. As a permanent resident, if you decide to relocate here, if your kids are born here, they're automatically Panamanian citizens, which is also very interesting. And so if you are bringing a second passport with you through the blood, let's say you're Canadian, American, French, whatever it may be, and your kids are born here, you will essentially grant them your citizenship by right of the blood. And then your kids are born here, they're Panamanian citizens automatically by right of the soil. And then afterwards you join them after you've been a permanent resident for 5 years and you go through the entire process. Then, you can also potentially become a citizen and become a Panamanian passport holder yourself with all the privileges that passport grants you. So there you have it, the country in the Americas that allows you to become a permanent resident instantaneously while at the same time diversifying your global investment portfolio into interesting stocks here in the Americas. If you want to know more about Panama, about beautiful Casco Viejo, about the business district in Costa del Este or Punta Pacifica or wherever it is, and you want to explore more alternatives, then drop a comment down below, subscribe to this YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, and remember, this is the Tax Terminator, live from Panama City.